In this video, we will take a look at all the different Dremel models. I will leave links to all the models in the description below. Let's start with the smallest one. The Stylo Plus 2050 is the smallest Dremel model and it is good for doing fine details and light work. This is a corded tool. It has a power button here, the shaft lock button that you press to change bits is here, and you set the speed with this wheel. The Stylo Plus has an RPM range from 5,000 RPMs to 22,000 RPMs. It is rated for 0.5 amps. The biggest advantage of the Dremel Stylo is the small size. It is by far the most ergonomical Dremel model to use. You are completely free to guide the tool in any direction you want without being held back by the weight or the stiffer cord from the flex shaft. So, for making fine details on wood carvings, when you really have to get close and accuracy is important, the Stylo is definitely one of the best Dremel models. But if you want to remove a lot of material with some rougher bits, the Stylo will not get you very far. You can also use it on other materials, like for example when engraving metal, engraving glass, removing excess from plastic and 3D prints, and even for carving pumpkins. The biggest con of the Stylo is the power. It is very limited. As you can see here, I don't have to use a lot of force to stop the motor. The tool runs really quiet at lower RPMs, but when I set it to max speed, it makes this high-pitched noise due to vibration. This is more common with larger bits. The Stylo cannot be used with most of the Dremel attachments, because it does not have the proper threads at the front. But you can use all the attachment that fits into the place of the collet nut, like the keyless chuck and the dust blower. All in all, the Stylo is a good tool for its purpose, making fine details and doing light tasks. And I can highly recommend it for doing exactly that. But don't buy it to get some raw power for cutting through thick bolts. This only took me about 15 minutes. The Light 7760 is one of the smaller cordless tools Dremel has to offer. This can be a good tool to have laying around for doing quick jobs around the house or in the workshop. On the Dremel Light, the power button and the speed setting is the same slider. It has an RPM range from 8,000 to 25,000 RPMs. The battery is rated for 2 amp hours and the voltage is 3.6. It works fine for doing arts and crafts, odd jobs here and there like sanding, engraving, and cutting small stuff. It is very easy to just pick up and start working with without any setup. This is also one of the cheaper cordless Dremel models, so it can be a good way to get into the cordless world if you don't want to deal with a cord. Okay, so the Dremel Light is kind of hard to place. It is smaller and less powerful than the full-size Dremel models like the Dremel 8260, but it is larger and more powerful than the Dremel Stylo 2050. So I find myself using this tool very little compared to the other Dremel models. The light can be used with almost all of the Dremel attachments that screws onto the threads at the front. The battery is built into the tool and charges with a USB cord. The charging time from empty to full is about 2 hours and 45 minutes. And runtime on a full battery is about 20 to 40 minutes, depending on how hard you use it. This is the reason I would only recommend this tool for doing quick jobs here and there. It is a bummer to run out of battery in the middle of your carving session, and then you have to wait for it to charge back up. The Dremel Light might be the perfect model for some people, but for my use, I can't quite find a place for it. I used around 6 minutes for cutting through the bolt with this one. But when cutting through the bolt, the tool would stop because it was binding. And sometimes when I wanted to turn it on again, it span for like 2 or 3 rounds and then stopped. But this is probably my fault, because the tool should not be used for cutting thick bolts. The Dremel 3000 is the budget-friendly option when it comes to the more powerful Dremel models. But it has one annoying problem that we will talk about soon. The Dremel 3000 is a corded tool. The power button and the speed control is the same slider. It has an RPM range from 5,000 to 35,000 RPMs. And this is where the shaft lock button should be if I had one. And the motor has 130 watts. The Dremel 3000 is bigger and more powerful than the Dremel Light, but smaller and weaker than the Dremel 4000. But it still has some power to it. You can expect the Dremel 3000 to be able to do all the tasks that you would expect of a full-size rotary tool. You could use it for heavier jobs like routing, cutting metal, cutting tile, and it does a fairly good job. But you can also do more detailed work by attaching the flex shaft. This way you keep the power, but you get more accuracy. But the Dremel 3000 has one big problem. We need to open up the tool. This is the shaft, and this pin goes into this hole when you press the shaft lock button to change bits. When we accidentally press the shaft lock button while the tool is running, or if we tighten the bits too much, the shaft lock button will start to slip out of the hole, and over time it will wear on the metal. And we won't be able to change bits. If you're lucky, it's only the shaft lock button that is worn. Then you can just buy a new one and replace it. I just drilled a hole through the spindle instead and use a broken screwdriver to lock the shaft. If you get to 3000, don't over tighten the bits and don't touch the shaft lock button when the tool is running. The Dremel 3000 has a little bit less power than its big brother, the Dremel 4000. If you use too much force when working, you will notice that the motor struggles a bit and the RPMs will go down. This is more noticeable at lower RPMs, but for most uses, it should be powerful enough. So if you want one of the more powerful Dremel models and don't want to spend too much, the Dremel 3000 is a fine choice. I used about 1 minute to cut this bolt with the Dremel 3000. It is a good idea to not use a vise with plastic holders when cutting metal. The metal will heat up and melt the plastic. I learned this the hard way. The Dremel 4000 is my most used Dremel model, and I know it's one of the more popular Dremel models for power carvers and wood carvers. The Dremel 4000 is a corded tool. This is the power button, this is the speed control, and it has an RPM range from 5000 to 35,000 RPMs. The shaft lock button is here, and the motor has 175 watts. With the 4000, Dremel fixed all the problems that could be found on a Dremel 3000. The shaft lock uses a larger pin that won't strip out, and the shaft lock button is locked when the tool is running. It has a stronger motor, so it can handle it if you use a little bit more force, and the motor will not struggle as much. And it also works better at lower RPMs without bogging down as much. But you can still stop it if you force it enough. In my opinion, the Dremel 4000 has one of the best designs between the different Dremel models. It is thin, easy to handle, and hangs well when working with the flex shaft. I've used and abused this tool for 3 years now, and I've not had any problems with it to this day. One bad thing is that you have to open up the tool to change the brushes. On the Dremel 3000, you can change the brushes from the outside. The brushes connects the circuit to get the tool running, and they wear down over time. I can highly recommend the 4000 if you are in the market for a powerful, reliable, and mid-priced Dremel. I cut the bolt in about 1 minute with this one. At this point, cutting the bolt will not go much faster with more power, because using more pressure will just overheat the cutting disc and metal. When cutting bolts like this, be mindful of kickback. It usually happens when you're cutting close to an edge, and a bolt is all edge. Keep 2 hands on the tool and stay focused. You are in charge of your own safety. When buying a Dremel, you will find that most of the Dremel models comes with different types of kits, where different attachments and bits are included. Getting the attachments from kits is cheaper than buying the tool and the attachments separately. To figure out which kits and attachments is best for you, I recommend watching this video about all the different Dremel attachments. Just go to my channel page, sort by most popular, and you will see it on top. The Dremel 4250 and the 4300 are basically the same tool as far as I can see, with only some minor differences. The only differences between these two that I could find is that the Dremel 4300 usually comes with a light module LM1 and the keyless chuck 8846. Also, the 4250 runs a little bit more quiet and with less vibration than the 4300. But as far as design, use cases and power, they are the same tool. The power button is here, the speed control is here, and it has an RPM range from 5000 to 35,000 RPMs. The shaft lock button is here, and it has 175 watts. This is definitely a solid tool. We can see that Dremel has designed this to look more heavy duty. It has a stripe pattern on the edges that will give us a good grip on the tool for those heavier tasks. Dremel 4250 is a beefed up version of the Dremel 4000. It has the same amount of power as the 4000, but the air vents are larger on this tool, which will help the motor stay cool for longer under pressure. The Dremel 4000 has smaller air vents, so it will get hotter faster if used under pressure for a long time. You can also change the brushes really quickly from the outside on this model. I've seen some places on the internet state that you cannot use attachments with the 4300, but the work light is removable. You can only use one attachment at a time. I will leave a link for an attachment compatibility chart in the description below. There is not really much more to say about this model. It is a solid, high-quality model, and it can do everything that the Dremel 4000 can do. It is just a little bit quieter and runs better over time. So if you know you're going to use the Dremel for longer sessions and be a little bit hard on the tool, then the 4250 and 4300 might be the right choice for you. This is the 8220. This model was one of the best cordless Dremel models for a long time. But ever since Dremel released the 8250 and 60, it has become less relevant. But it is still a good tool, so we will quickly go through it. This is the power button. This is the speed control, and it has an RPM range from 5000 to 35,000 RPMs. This is the shaft lock button, and it has a removable 2 amp hour 12-volt battery. The 8220 is a really good tool to have charged up and lying around for doing quick jobs here and there. It has some good power and can handle most of the heavier tasks. And I would much rather have this lying around for quick jobs than the Dremel Lite that we talked about earlier. At lower RPMs, the 8220 will bog down if too much force is applied. But this is also the case with the 4000 and 4250. So it is comparable to these models when it comes to power. The 8260 and 8250 has better torque than all the other models and won't really bog down at lower RPMs. The runtime of the battery is about 25 minutes if you use it for heavier tasks, and more if you use it for lighter tasks. Going over to one of these cordless models is so freeing when you don't have to worry about a cable getting in the way or being close to an outlet. You can work from anywhere you want. The charging time from empty to full is around 1.5 hours. But on the 8220 you can remove the battery. So you have the option to get a second battery that you could use while the other one is charging. The battery in the 8220 cannot be used with other Dremel models like the 8240, 50 and 60. All in all, it is a good tool, but I would recommend getting one of the newer cordless Dremel models instead. This is the Dremel 8240, and it is the more affordable model of the new Dremel cordless rotary tools. It is a good rotary tool with some good power, but there are some things about it that I don't like as much. First off, the tool is pretty big, and it is larger than the 8260. If you go from the Dremel 3000 to this, it would almost be twice the size. This is the power button, this is the shaft lock button, and this is the speed control. I don't really like the design of the speed control. It seems kind of jammed and it is harder to turn than the other models. It has an RPM range from 5000 to 35,000 RPMs. The Dremel 8240 has a 2 amp hour 12-volt battery. When wood carving with the flex shaft non-stop, it lasted for about 34 minutes, which is pretty good, and a little bit longer than the 8220. The charging time from empty to full is around 65 minutes. The battery on the 8240, 50 and 60 are all cross-compatible, but the Dremel 8250 and 60 comes with a more powerful 3 amp hour battery. These batteries are also compatible with some of the Bosch power tools, which is pretty awesome. When it comes to power, it has more than enough. A little bit more than the 8220, but less than the 8260. This tool has a brushed motor. The brushes on the battery-powered Dremel models are built into the motor assembly in a different way from the corded ones. These are harder to get access to. I mean, the tool works fine. It is not that expensive, it can do all the things that you would expect of a rotary tool, and it is a small upgrade from the Dremel 8220. But I do like the more compact design and speed control of the Dremel 8220 better. The Dremel 8250 and 8260 are the first brushless Dremel models. These two models are the most powerful handheld rotary tools that Dremel has to offer. The only difference between the Dremel 8250 and 60 is that the 8260 can be connected to your phone and the Dremel app via Bluetooth. And the 8260 has a unique design that looks different from the normal blue and gray color scheme. This is the power button. This is the speed control. It has an RPM range from 5000 to 30,000 RPMs. This is the shaft lock button, and it comes with a 12-volt 3 amp hour battery. The 8260 is a big step up in power from previous models. You can really notice the power at lower RPMs. The motor keeps a steady RPM even when I use a lot of force. And if you overload the tool too much, the motor will stop and this light will light up and let you know. You can expect this tool to handle any task that you would expect of a rotary tool. The runtime of this tool is also very good. When doing a wood carving test, I was able to work for 50 plus minutes straight without any breaks. This is twice the runtime of the Dremel 8220. This is due to the brushless motor being more efficient and a larger battery pack. The Dremel 8260 can connect to your phone and the Dremel app via Bluetooth. You can see some stats about the tool here, the battery level, and you can control the RPMs from the app. It also has a bit finder that you can use to find the proper bits for the task and the recommended RPMs. The 8250 and 8260 are quality tools and I can highly recommend them. The smart functions of the 8260 is nice to have, but they are not vital. So if you want the 8250 instead, that is perfectly fine. I think it is also a little bit cheaper. These models are a little bit more expensive than the other brushed full-size Dremel models, but the increase in power, the battery and the good quality of the tools make it worth the extra investment in my opinion. Also, the design of the 8260 is pretty cool. There are more Dremel models out there that I did not quite fit into this video. Leave a comment if you have any questions and I will try to answer them for you. See you next time.